Nia Santos stared at the empty spot in the playpen, her jaw clenching as exhaustion turned to fury. The blue rabbit was gone. Again. "Leo, where's Mr. Boon Boon?" she asked, her voice tight with the kind of exhaustion that came from 3 sleepless nights and a toddler who refused to accept that his favorite toy had vanished into thin air. Leo, her 2.5-year-old son, pointed a chubby finger toward the open patio door and wailed. It wasn't just a cry. It was the full-body, red-faced siren of a toddler who had lost his best friend and couldn't understand why the world was so cruel. "That is the 3rd toy this week," Nia muttered, running a hand through her messy bun as she stalked toward the window. On the couch, Zoe, her best friend and self-appointed life coach, didn't bother looking up from her phone. She was painting her nails a violent shade of neon pink, each stroke deliberate and unbothered by the chaos unfolding around her. "Maybe Mr. Bun Bun ran away," Zoe suggested, blowing on her nails. "Maybe he couldn't handle the stress of potty training. I know I can't." "Zoe, this isn't funny," Nia snapped, grabbing her keys from the counter. She pointed out the window toward the backyard, where her modest lawn met the low wooden fence that separated her property from the mansion next door. The house had been empty for years, a looming modern structure that the neighborhood kids called the Murder Mansion because of its dark windows and imposing steel gates. But last month someone had moved in. Someone with money, secrets, and apparently a beast disguised as a dog, and there he was. Thor, a Cane Corso the size of a small horse, trotted victoriously across the manicured lawn of the mansion, his massive black head held high. In his jaws he held Mr. Bun Bun, Leo's favorite blue rabbit, now soggy and limp. "Okay, that is a dinosaur, not a dog," Zoe gasped, finally standing up and pressing her face against the window. "Nia, do not go over there. That neighbor looks like he owns a shark tank." "I don't care if he owns a dragon," Nia growled, the mama bear instinct taking over every rational thought. "That rabbit cost $20 and Leo is crying. I'm getting it back." She marched out the back door, across the lawn, and pounded on the heavy iron side gate of the mansion. Zoe followed at a safe distance, holding up her phone with one hand, while still protecting her wet nails with the other. "I'm recording this," Zoe whispered, "for evidence, or for TikTok, depending on if we die." The intercom buzzed to life and a deep, cold voice crackled through the speaker. "Deliveries go to the front." "I'm not a delivery service," Nia yelled into the camera mounted above the gate. "I'm the neighbor you're robbing. Your Cujo just stole my son's rabbit for the 3rd time. Send the dog out or I'm coming over the fence." There was a long silence. Then the heavy iron gate clicked and slowly swung open with the kind of ominous creak that would have made Nia reconsider her life choices if she weren't already too angry to care. She didn't hesitate. She marched into the courtyard, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished stone. The back door of the mansion opened, revealing a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne commercial, if that commercial had been directed by someone with a vendetta against smiling. Mr. Jin was wearing a dark silk robe over a crisp white dress shirt, the kind of outfit that screamed, "I have money and very little patience." He looked annoyed, tired, and dangerously handsome in a way that made Nia's anger falter for half a second before roaring back to life. His dark eyes swept over her with icy indifference, taking in her messy bun, her faded jeans, and the ketchup stain on her hoodie that she'd been meaning to wash out for 3 days. The silence around him was heavy, oppressive, a sharp contrast to the chaotic noise of Nia's life. "You are loud," Jin said, looking down at her like she was an insect that had crawled into his pristine home. "My dog does not steal. He is a trained protection animal. He has no interest in rabbits." "Really?" Nia crossed her arms, her tired eyes blazing. "Then explain that." She pointed. Thor was sitting on the porch, looking innocent despite the blue fluff sticking out of his massive jaws. The dog's tail thumped once against the stone, and he dropped the slobbery rabbit at Jin's feet like a proud hunter presenting a kill. Jin stared at the toy. He stared at the dog. For a moment, something almost human flickered across his face, embarrassment maybe, or disbelief. "Thor," Jin sighed, rubbing his temples with long fingers. "We discussed this." "Give me the rabbit," Nia demanded, stepping forward. Behind Jin, a shadow detached itself from the doorway. A woman, tall, athletic, dressed in all black, stepped into view, her hand moving toward her jacket in a motion that made Zoe squeak in fear. But Jin raised a hand, and the woman viper, Nia would later learn, froze. Jin picked up the soggy toy with 2 fingers, holding it away from his body like it was contaminated. He handed it to Nia, his expression carefully blank. "Keep your fence fixed," Jin said coldly, "and keep your noise down. You are barking up the wrong tree if you think I have patience for neighbors. And you, Nia shot back, snatching the rabbit and clutching it to her chest, are going to pay for dry cleaning. Control your beast. She grabbed Zoe's arm and marched away, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. Behind them, the iron gate closed with a final, decisive clang. He was terrifying, Zoe whispered as they crossed back into Nia's yard. But did you see his cheekbones? We should invite him to the barbecue. We are not inviting him to the barbecue, Zoe, Nia said, shaking with adrenaline. We are calling Marcus. I need a high-definition security camera. I'm going to catch that dog in the act and then I'm filing a police report. An hour later, Nia's doorbell rang with the secret knock. 3 shorts, 2 longs. Family. She opened the door and her backup arrived. Marcus came first, her older brother, wearing his full security guard uniform complete with a utility belt heavy with flashlights, pepper spray, and a baton that had never seen real action but made him feel official. He didn't say hello. He scanned the hallway for threats, his eyes narrowing at the window facing the neighbor's house. Perimeter check complete, Marcus grunted, stepping inside. I ran the plates on the SUV next door. Shell company. Definitely trouble. Behind him waddled Grandma Zai Gigi to the family, the tiny matriarch who smelled of peppermint and judgment. She was clutching her 2 essential weapons, a large leather-bound Bible in her left hand and a pink taser in her right. Where is the beast? Zai asked, squinting suspiciously at the air as if she could sense evil through the walls. I felt a chill as soon as I stepped off the porch. That man next door, he is carrying a heavy spirit, Nia. A very heavy spirit. He's just a rich jerk with a mean dog, Gigi. Nia sighed, ushering them in. But thank you for coming. I brought the holy water, Zai announced, patting her purse. And the taser. The Lord protects, but electricity corrects. By 8 o'clock that evening, the living room had been transformed into a command center. Marcus stood on a ladder, drilling a high-definition camera into the window frame, while Zoe sat on the couch eating chips and watching him work with appreciation. You know, Zoe mused, if the neighbor is a criminal, he's a really well-dressed one. Maybe we should bake him cookies before we arrest him. He is not eating my cookies. Zai snapped from the armchair, keeping one eye on the window. Men like that don't eat sweets. They eat souls. Focus, people, Nia said, pacing the floor with a sleeping Leo on her hip. His chubby cheek pressed against her shoulder, his mouth slightly open in the way toddlers slept, trusting, peaceful, unaware that his mother was waging war over a stuffed rabbit. I don't care about his soul. I just want proof that his dog is terrorizing my kid. Once we have it on video, I can go to the police. And then he puts a hit out on us, Marcus muttered, jumping down from the ladder. There, it's live. He connected the feed to Nia's laptop and the screen flickered to life. The image was crisp, high-contrast black and white, showing the backyard in perfect detail. Now, Nia whispered, pulling up a chair. We wait. They sat in silence, the house quiet except for XY's low humming of a hymn that sounded more ominous than comforting. Then, at 9:14 p.m., movement on the screen. A massive shadow detached itself from the darkness of Mr. Jin's yard. Thor, the dog, didn't bark. He moved with terrifying silence, a predator in the night. He approached the low wooden fence and cleared it in a single bound, his powerful muscles propelling him over the barrier like it was nothing. He's jumping the perimeter, Marcus hissed, leaning forward. Thor padded toward the back porch, sniffing the air. Then he moved toward the basket of laundry Nia had left out to dry. He grabbed Leo's favorite yellow blanket in his massive jaws, shook his head violently, ripping the blanket from the basket, and then turned and bounded back over the fence, disappearing into the dark. He's stealing the bedding now, Nia gasped, her hands gripping the edge of the table. He's taking the blankets off my baby's back. That animal is a menace, Marcus agreed, his face grim. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's it, Nia said, her voice trembling with rage. I have the evidence. Tomorrow I'm going to war. She didn't notice the tiny detail on the screen. She didn't see why the dog had shaken the blanket so violently. She didn't see the scorpion that had fallen out of the folds and scuttled away into the grass, its tail curled and ready to strike. The camera saw it, but the humans were only looking for a villain. The next morning the sun was shining, but Nia's mood was stormy. She didn't bother with the intercom this time. She stood at the iron gate of the murder mansion and held down the buzzer for 10 straight seconds, the sound echoing through the courtyard like an air raid siren. I know you're in there, Nia shouted into the camera. I have 4K footage of your dog committing larceny. The gate didn't open. Instead, a side door clicked and a man hurried out, thin, nervous, wearing glasses that he immediately started wiping with a handkerchief. Secretary Han, Nia would later learn, looked even more stressed than the day before. "Miss, please," Han hissed, glancing nervously at the street. "The chairman is on a conference call with international investors. We cannot have shouting." "Then tell him to come out here and face the music," Nia said, holding up her tablet. "I want to file a formal complaint. Your dog stole a blanket, a rabbit, and my sanity. I am sure we can reimburse you," Han began, reaching for his wallet. "It's not about the money, Han. It's about, let her in." The deep voice cut through the air like a knife. Mr. Jin stood on the balcony above them, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that probably cost more than Nia's car. He looked down at them like a king surveying peasants, his dark eyes unreadable. The gate buzzed open. Nia marched into the courtyard, her tablet thrust forward like a weapon. She shoved it toward Jin as he descended the stone stairs with the kind of grace that came from never having to rush for anything. "Look," Nia demanded. "Prof, your dog jumps the fence, takes the blanket, and runs. He's a menace." Jin didn't look at the tablet. He didn't even glance at the paused image of Thor mid-jump. Instead, his dark eyes scanned the street behind Nia, checking the parked cars, checking the rooftops. He seemed tense in a way that had nothing to do with her complaint. "You have a child," Jin stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Leo. The one your dog is terrorizing," Nia snapped. "And you live alone?" Jin continued, his voice void of emotion. "No security detail. Just a brother who works part-time shifts and a grandmother with a taser." Nia froze. Her blood ran cold. "How do you know about the taser?" Jin ignored the question. He stepped closer, invading her personal space in a way that made her heart race for reasons she didn't want to examine. He smelled of expensive cologne and danger, a combination that should have been illegal. "This neighborhood is not suitable for a child," Jin said quietly. "The fences are too low. The security is lacking." "It was a perfectly safe neighborhood until you moved in," Nia shot back. Jin pulled a checkbook from his jacket pocket. He uncapped a gold pen with deliberate precision. "I will buy your house," he said calmly. "Triple the market value. Cash. Today." Nia blinked. She looked at the checkbook, then at his face, searching for the punchline. "Excuse me?" $5 million, Jin said, writing a number that made Secretary Han choke on air. He ripped the check out and held it toward her. "Take the money, pack your bags, leave the city. Ideally, go somewhere with high walls." Nia stared at the check. It was enough money to solve every problem she had: student loans, Leo's future, a new house in a safe neighborhood. But the mama bear in her bristled. He wasn't asking. He was ordering. He was trying to erase her. "You think money talks?" Nia asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Money screams, Miss Santos," Jin replied. "Listen to it." Nia took the check. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she tore it in half, letting the pieces fall onto his polished driveway like confetti. "I'm not moving," she said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "This is my home. My grandmother lives down the street. My life is here. Fix your dog, Mr. Jin, or I'm calling the cops." She turned and stormed out, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone within a mile could hear it. Behind her, Jin watched her go. He didn't look angry about the torn check. He looked worried. "She is stubborn," Han noted, bending to pick up the paper scraps. "She is walking on a minefield," Jin murmured, watching a suspicious gray sedan drive slowly past Nia's house. "And she refuses to let me carry her off it." 2 days later, the atmosphere in Nia's house was thick with tension. Marcus was back at the window, peering through the blinds with a pair of binoculars he'd bought online that made him look like a suburban spy. "That gray sedan is back," Marcus muttered. "It's been circling the block for an hour, slow roll, tinted windows." "It's probably a real estate agent," Nia said, not looking up from her laptop. She was trying to finish a logo design for a client, but her hands were shaking. The coffee she'd made 3 hours ago sat cold and untouched. "Mr. Jin probably hired someone to harass me into selling." "I don't know, Nia," Marcus said, his voice serious in a way that made her stomach clench. "This doesn't feel like harassment. It feels like reconnaissance." "We should just take the money," Zoe added from the couch, where she was painting her nails a new shade of electric blue. "You know what they say, it's better to let sleeping dogs lie than to poke them with a stick." "I am not running away because a rich man snapped his fingers," Nia insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Outside, little Leo was in his playpen in the backyard, babbling happily at a butterfly. It was a warm afternoon, quiet and peaceful, the kind of day that made Nia think maybe everything would be okay. Until the silence broke. Thump. Nia looked up. The sound came from the monitor on her desk, the live feed from the backyard camera. Her blood turned to ice. Thor was back. The massive dog cleared the fence in a single bound, but this time he didn't sneak. He was moving with urgent, terrifying speed, his body a black blur of muscle and intent. He didn't go for a toy. He didn't go for a blanket. He went straight for the playpen. "Leo!" Nia screamed, jumping from her chair so fast her laptop crashed to the floor. On the screen, Thor slammed his heavy body against the plastic side of the playpen. The force of the impact shoved the entire pen and the screaming toddler inside 3 feet to the left, away from the thick hedges that lined the back fence. Thor stood between the playpen and the hedge, his massive head lowered. His lips curled back to reveal teeth that looked like they belonged on a shark, and a low, vibrating growl rumbled from his chest. The sound was so deep the camera microphone peaked with static, distorting into white noise. He barked once, a thunderous, aggressive sound directed at the bushes. Then, just as quickly as he'd arrived, he turned and vaulted back over the fence into Mr. Jin's yard. Nia burst out the back door, Marcus right behind her with his pepper spray drawn like a weapon. She scooped up a crying Leo, checking him frantically for bites, for scratches, for any sign that the beast had hurt him. "He hit the pen," Nia cried, clutching her son to her chest. "He attacked the pen." "I didn't see him bite," Marcus said, breathing hard, aiming the spray at the empty yard. "He just shoved it." "He's escalating," Nia said, her fear crystallizing into cold resolve. "He almost tipped the baby over. That's it. No more warnings." She carried Leo inside, slamming the door and locking it with shaking hands. "Pull the footage, Marcus," she ordered. "I'm sending it to the police right now." Marcus sat at the computer and rewound the tape. They watched Thor jump. They watched him shove the pen. But then Marcus paused the video, his finger hovering over the mouse. "Nia," Marcus whispered, "look at the leaves." He zoomed in on the top right corner of the screen, the thick hedge that Thor had barked at. Nia squinted at the grainy black and white image. Just as Thor charged, the bushes moved, not from the wind. Something or someone was hiding in the greenery, right where Leo had been sitting seconds before. And when the dog charged, the shape recoiled and vanished. That night, a thunderstorm rolled over the city. Rain lashed against the windows, masking all sounds from the outside world. Inside, the mood was grave. Nia and Marcus sat hunched over the computer screen, replaying the footage from that afternoon for the 100th time. "Stop," Nia whispered. "Go back 3 frames, zoom in on the hedge." Marcus clicked the mouse. The image was grainy, distorted by the afternoon sunlight, but the high-definition camera did its job. They watched the moment again, Thor clearing the fence, slamming into the playpen, shoving Leo 3 feet to the left. "Now," Nia said, pointing at the screen with a trembling finger. "Look at the gap in the bushes, right where Leo's head was a second before the shove." Marcus applied a filter to sharpen the shadows. Nia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. There, half hidden in the leaves, was a gloved hand. It was reaching through the fence, holding a thick white cloth, a rag, likely soaked in chloroform. "They were trying to grab him," Marcus whispered, his face draining of color. "The guy was reaching for Leo. Thor didn't attack the pen. He moved the target. He saved him." Nia breathed, tears welling in her eyes. "He saw the man in the bushes. He pushed Leo out of reach and barked to scare the guy off." "And the blanket?" Marcus asked, clicking back to the footage from 2 nights ago. "Why did he take the blanket?" They watched the older clip with new eyes. Thor grabbed the yellow blanket, but this time Nia noticed something else. Thor didn't just run with it. He dragged it away from the fence line, dropped it in the middle of the yard, and stood over it, barking at the darkness before jumping back over the fence. He was moving Leo's scent, Marcus realized, his voice filled with awe and horror. He was taking the items that smelled like the baby away from the perimeter, so the kidnappers couldn't track exactly where he sleeps. Nia slumped back in her chair. The realization hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. She had screamed at Mr. Jin. She had torn up his check. She had threatened to call animal control on the only creature that had actually protected her son. "I called him a monster," Nia whispered, "but he's a guardian." She looked out the rain-streaked window at the murder mansion. It was dark, silent, and imposing. But now it didn't look like a fortress of evil. It looked like a watchtower. "Marcus," Nia said, standing up with sudden determination, "unlock the back door." "Nia, it's pouring rain," Marcus argued. "And there are bad men watching the house." "I know," Nia said, walking to the fridge. She pulled out a massive, expensive ribeye steak she'd been saving for a special occasion. "That's why I need to apologize to the only security detail that actually works." The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the backyard into a mud pit. Nia pulled her coat tighter, shielding the plastic container in her hands. She stood at the low wooden fence that separated her world from the murder mansion, rain soaking through her clothes within seconds. "Mr. Jin," she shouted over the thunder. "Mr. Jin, I know you have cameras. Come out here." Nothing happened for a long minute. Then the floodlights of the mansion snapped on, cutting through the gloom like searchlights. The back door opened and Mr. Jin stepped out. He wasn't wearing a raincoat. He held a large black umbrella, moving with a calm, deliberate grace that made the storm seem irrelevant. Thor trotted beside him, his massive head lowered against the rain. Jin walked to the fence and stopped a few feet away, keeping dry under his umbrella while Nia stood soaking wet in the mud. "You are shouting again," Jin said, his voice barely audible over the rain. "And you're wet. Go inside, Miss Santos." "I'm not leaving until I give this to him," Nia said, holding up the container. She popped the lid, revealing the raw ribeye steak. Thor's ears perked up immediately. He whined, looking from the meat to his master, waiting for permission like a well-trained soldier. "I watched the footage," Nia shouted, wiping rain from her eyes. "I saw the man in the bushes. I saw Thor push Leo out of the way. I was wrong." Jin went very still. The indifference vanished from his face, replaced by a sharp, dangerous alertness that made him look like a predator who'd just caught a scent. "You saw a man?" Jin asked, stepping closer to the fence. "A hand," Nia corrected, her voice breaking. "Reaching for my son, your dog stopped him." She looked down at the massive beast, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "I called him a monster, but he's the only reason I still have my baby tonight." She offered the steak over the fence. "It's an apology. For him." Jin really looked at her for the first time. He saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw the stubborn set of her jaw. She wasn't running away. She was standing in a thunderstorm to feed a dog because it was the right thing to do. "Thor," Jin said softly, "take it." The dog stepped forward and gently took the steak from Nia's hand. He didn't snatch it. He took it with surprising delicacy, then sat down in the mud to enjoy his prize, rain streaming off his black coat. "You should have taken the check," Jin said, his voice low and serious. "The man in the bushes, he is not a burglar, Nia. He is a hunter, and he is hunting me. By living next door, you are in the crossfire." "I gathered that," Nia said, shivering. "But this is my home. I'm not running. And apparently I have the best security system in the city living right next door." Jin stared at her. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, the first real expression she'd seen on his face. He shifted his umbrella, extending it over the fence so that it covered Nia, shielding her from the rain. He stayed in the wet, letting her have the shelter. "You are foolish," Jin murmured, "but you are brave. And you," Nia said, looking up at him under the black silk canopy, "are in big trouble because now you owe me an explanation." "I owe you more than that," Jin said. His dark eyes held hers, and for a moment the storm faded, the danger faded. Everything faded except the strange pull between them. "Go inside. Lock your doors. Do not open them for anyone but me." He pulled the umbrella back, leaving her in the rain again as he turned to leave. But before he reached the door, he stopped. "And Nia?" "Yes." "The rabbit," Jin called back without turning around. "Thor liked the blue one best. I will buy your son a new one. A bigger one." As Nia stood under Jin's umbrella in the pouring rain, having just apologized for calling Thor a monster, Jin stared at her with an intensity that had nothing to do with the security threat. "You watched the footage," Jin said quietly. "You saw the hand reaching for Leo." "Yes, Thor saved him. I was wrong about everything." "How old is your son?" Jin asked suddenly. Nia blinked, confused by the abrupt question. "What?" "He's 2.5. Why? What's his birthday?" "May 15th. "Jin, what does this have to—" "And his father." Jin's voice was carefully controlled, but his hand gripped the umbrella handle so hard his knuckles turned white. "Not in the picture. Never was." Nia pulled her coat tighter against the rain. "It was a one-night thing years ago. A conference. I don't even—" She stopped. The rain pounded around them, but everything else went silent. 3 years ago. Seoul. A tech conference she'd attended on a freelance graphic design gig. The hotel bar. The man with the dangerous smile who'd made her forget every responsible choice she'd ever made. One perfect night of laughter and chemistry and feeling alive for the first time in years. Then he'd gotten an emergency call at 3 a.m. and disappeared. She'd never gotten his real name, just Mr. G. Her eyes locked on Jin's face, really seeing it for the first time. The sharp cheekbones, the dark, intense eyes, the way he held himself with absolute control. Leo had those same dark, intense eyes, that same serious expression when he concentrated, the way he studied things before touching them, exactly like Jin examining the slobbery rabbit that first day. "Oh my God," Nia whispered, taking a step back. "The Seoul conference, the Millennium Hotel. You were—" "I never forgot you," Jin said, his voice raw in a way she hadn't heard before. "I've been looking for you for 3 years. The hotel had no records. You used a fake name for the room. I had investigators searching 3 continents. You were right next door this whole time," Nia breathed. "I need to see him," Jin said. "I need to see my son." The next morning, the doorbell rang. Nia opened it to find a delivery box the size of a refrigerator sitting on her porch. There was no return address. Zoe and Grandma Z helped her drag it inside. "It's a bomb," Z declared, standing back with her taser. "The devil sent a Trojan horse." "It's not a bomb, Gigi," Nia said, slicing the tape with shaking hands. She opened the flaps. Inside was a stuffed blue rabbit the size of a grown man. It was ridiculously soft, high-quality plush with a silk ribbon around its neck. Tucked into the ribbon was a note written in elegant, sharp handwriting. "For Leo. The perimeter is reinforced. Do not go outside today." Leo shrieked with joy and tackled the giant rabbit, his chubby arms barely reaching halfway around it. "He bought the baby a toy bigger than the baby," Zoe sighed dreamily. "Nia, if you don't marry this man, I will." But Nia wasn't looking at the rabbit. She was staring at the note, her mind racing. "Do not go outside today." That wasn't a suggestion. That was a warning. That night, Nia couldn't sleep. She kept reviewing the camera footage, watching Thor jump the fence, shove the playpen, save Leo from the reaching hand. The dog deserved more than a steak. He deserved a medal. But now everything was different. That wasn't just her son Thor had saved. It was Jin's son, too. She was watching the footage again at 2 a.m. when her phone buzzed. A text from Jin. "Can't sleep either. Need to talk. Coming over." Before she could respond, there was a soft knock on her back door. She opened it to find Jin standing there in the rain, Thor beside him. "I had Secretary Han pull hospital records," Jin said without preamble. "Leo's birth certificate. You listed the father as unknown. But the hospital in Los Angeles where he was born was in LA that exact week. The dates match perfectly. Jin, I've spent 3 years looking for the woman from Seoul. Do you know why?" Nia shook her head, unable to speak. "Because that night mattered. Because I wanted to find you again. Because He stopped, collecting himself. "And then I move here, and there's this woman next door with a dog-stealing problem and fire in her eyes, and I thought I need to get her away from here before my enemies use her against me." I never looked at her son closely. I never asked his age. I never connected the dots. Until now, Nia finished. "I'm his father." Jin's voice cracked. "That man in the bushes wasn't just trying to kidnap a random child. He was trying to take my heir." "Your heir?" "The Jin family has been waiting 200 years for a male heir to continue the bloodline. My father died without seeing a grandson, my grandfather before him. 8 generations of daughters or no children at all. Auntie Leo." Nia's blood ran cold. "You think your enemies know?" "I think they've known longer than I have." Before Nia could respond, headlights flooded her living room. Not one car. 5 black SUVs surrounded her house. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo appeared, Leo asleep in his crib, taken from inside his room. Tonight, the text read, "We've been inside your house for weeks. We know everything. The DNA results from the hospital archives. The bloodline. They here. Deliver the child to us by dawn, or we burn down everything you love." The Chung family. Another photo appeared, Grandma G's house lit from within. Marcus's apartment building, Zoe's car parked outside. They had everyone. Nia's hands shook. "They're threatening my family." Jin's face went hard. He pulled out his phone. "Secretary Han, Protocol 7. Now." He looked at Nia. "I have a compound in Switzerland. Fortified. My jet is fueled. We can be in the air in 90 minutes. Run away? Live to fight another day. Here they have the advantage. They're in your house. They know your routines. They've marked your family." His voice dropped. "There, you'll be safe. Leo will be safe. And I can wage war on the Chung-A family without worrying that every bullet is aimed at my son. You want me to take Leo and disappear?" "No." Jin stepped closer. "I want you, me and Leo, to leave together, as a family. We're not a family. We're a one-night stand with consequences. Then let me make it right." Jin pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Marry me, not for the bloodline, not for the Chung family, because I spent 3 years looking for you, and I'm not losing you again." "This is insane," Nia whispered. Right now you have three choices, Jin said. Run alone with Leo and spend your life hiding. Stay here and watch them pick off your family one by one. Or marry me tonight, get on that plane, and let me protect both of you. The SUVs outside began to move closer, engines idling, waiting. A new text: 1 hour until dawn, Miss Santos. Decide. Nia looked at the ring, at Jin's face, at the baby monitor showing Leo sleeping peacefully, unaware his entire world was about to change. At the camera footage still playing on her laptop, Thor jumping the fence, saving the child he'd somehow known was family all along. How long? She asked quietly. For what? How long do I have to decide if this marriage is real or just protection? Jin's eyes softened. As long as you need. But we leave for Switzerland in 1 hour, whether you're wearing that ring or not. Outside, the SUVs turned off their engines. Men in tactical gear stepped out, surrounding the house. The siege was beginning. And Nia had 60 minutes to pack a life, grab her son, and decide if she was running from Jin or running with him.